Nia, welcome so much to FYC at Contenders in Focus Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
I was a theater major myself and did a lot of Ibsen. When I was in college, Ibsen was writing at a different time, the late 1800s, but he obviously was interested in writing about women and women who were, for lack of a better word, shackled by something. And people didn't always like what he said.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, but when A Doll's House premiered in Germany, he had to change the ending. So Nora didn't leave. She had to stay.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Because
they thought
German audience, the actress actually who played Nora wouldn't allow it.
Wow.
So the world has changed, but it hasn't completely. And Hedda is very much of that same spirit. Could you talk a little bit about when you first read Hedda Gabler and how you started envisioning this adaptation in your mind?
So I similarly kind of came upon Ibsen while I was studying theater. I was getting my master's in London and was getting a writing MA at a drama school so I could work with actors, and we were working on text and just like talking about like the play within the play, and then we read A Doll's House and I thought that was amazing. I thought how crazy for this man to write this woman who leaves her family in this time period. And then the next thing I read of my own volition was Hedda Gabler. And I thought, wow, he really is invested in complicated, confrontational women. And from there, I sort of it just really stuck with me. And so eventually I thought I should adapt this.
Adapt it and make some changes. And there's a change in tone and there's a change in gender. So which comes first? Do you have in your mind to make it, I don't want to call it a horror film, but to make it a genre film of a certain kind? Yeah. And does that change the gender of Hedda's rival, or is it chicken and egg question, I guess? Well,
no, it's more like chicken and oranges. It's just like they were separate sort of trains of thought in my head. One was, honestly, the tone came from reading the play, thinking it was really funny, thinking it was like sexy at points, thinking it was tense, really tense. And then I saw a stage production of it, and none of that was there. Like I thought it was really dry. It felt a little flat. It felt like there was no frisson between anyone. And I thought the judge and Hedda in particular, I was just like, oh my God, these two, the relationship between these two is so like intense and sexy and terrifying. And I thought I want to bring that into the world of the text. So that was what happened there. And then with changing Eilert to Eileen, that was really me wanting to dig deeper into the relationship between these women and create another female character that was sort of a foil to Hedda, another woman who was doing what Hedda was doing, but in a very different way.
Because it changes it, not so much as a story about patriarchy, but about power.
Yeah.
And who is in charge and who has the power. Because these are two very strong-willed women, and they have they both hold something in their hands that could thwart the other.
Yes, absolutely.
Whereas in the traditional sense, it's just a patriarchal relationship, and you kind of know who's in charge.
Exactly, and you know, in the play, Loveborg, Eilert, he really like brings the world to Hedda. That's so much of the relationship. But I just felt like I really want to see two women talking to each other about this, and a woman punishing another woman for daring to color outside the lines. That to me was really compelling, and that to me, in a weird way, felt truer to Hedda than Eilert.
There's so many productions and interpretations of Hedda as a character. Were there some that you were determined to avoid, and maybe others that you were insistent on protecting?
I guess I just didn't want it to be boring in a way. I really didn't want it to be boring. But then the other thing was, I think a lot of productions can sometimes make the men too one-dimensional, or Like George can be so like, and like kind of, you know, and I just felt like, no, I think they all have to feel like they can really, in a way, harm Hedda. Like I think you have to feel that George is capable of controlling Hedda, because otherwise she's not oppressed in that dynamic. But the truth is she is. The judge, even though they're so close, like this is very clear in the play, there's the transactional nature of the relationship, the power that he sort of mortgages to her, I think she realizes by the end of the play. I wanted to make sure that was dynamic and but also really clear. So that's what I wanted to avoid, which like making them one-dimensional. And then I just wanted to keep Hedda's spirit. You know, I really wanted to keep her. She's hilarious. She's mean. I think she's also deeply empathetic, but she's a little nasty, which I think is quite interesting. And I wanted to make sure that stayed as well.
Why are you like this? You must know who she is by now. Oh, God. She'll be in control. You'll see. I know who you are. You don't want her in control. I'm not stupid, Hedda. No, you're not stupid. You're so clever, aren't you? So brave. Perhaps I should burn it off after all. Let go of me, please. If you ruin this for her, she'll never forgive you.
I kind of think of her as a marionette operator, that she is pulling strings all around her through imagination, creativity, through sex, that she is a manipulator and maybe is better than she thinks she is. I mean, that things get a little out of hand maybe because she's better at it than maybe she gives herself credit for. Is that one interpretation?
Yeah, I think so. And also, she doesn't know exactly what she's doing or to what end she's doing what she's doing. She doesn't know that at the end of the night she's going to burn that manuscript. She just knows in this moment, I want the manuscript. And she just knows in this moment, I want to hurt this person. But it's not, she doesn't have a master plan. And that's what I find really fascinating about her.
There's a fine line in the film between sex, the threat of sexual violence, and sexual violence. And I'm wondering how you navigated that as a storyteller and with your actors.
Yeah. Something I thought about a lot was, you know, people say everything is about sex except for sex, which is about power. And that was sort of something that we talked about a bit. Because a way in which she tries to attain power or control the flow of power is through sex and through desire, more specifically the promise of sex or the promise of consummation of a relationship. But again, I think you realize that this power is mortgaged to her because the judge, by the end of the film, shows what he's willing to do to get what he wants. And so, to me, it's like they're all in the same continuum. Sometimes you're on this end, which feels like you're really in control, you're flirting, you're like, there's a back and forth. And then there's this other end, which is, oh, actually, I don't have the control I thought I did. And that's when it teeters over into violence.
Can you talk about the conversations you had with Tessa about the mindset of this character? Because in some ways, it's a scary place to go as a performer.
Yeah. I think it was really about trying to understand, one, her relationships with all these people, but then we start with the relationships with the external people because her relationship with herself is the one that she is having the most trouble with. And knowing herself is sort of the hardest thing for her. So that was one starting point. And then another thing that you know, Tessa talks about quite a bit, which I really love, is talking about her as a child. You know, children do really cruel things at times, not because they're evil or mean, but because they're innocent. And they're like reactive, you know, and they're still learning how to control and understand their emotions. And Hedda is like that. And so I think that's a way that you can access her as a performer, which is to say, like, I'm not like playing evil. I'm just playing someone who, in a childlike, naive way, is just reacting to this world around her because she doesn't know how to hold all of it. And that was helpful, I think.
In Editorial, you add a couple of things that kind of change the tone. You have kind of chapter cards, which are written in a style that kind of suggests something scary.
Yeah.
You have a lot of sound effects and score. Can you talk about what you were looking for in Editorial and how that underscored what the I guess, the tone of the story you're trying to tell?
No, for sure. Yeah, I wanted everything to feel really close to Hedda. So the breaths that are in the score, that was something like the exhales. They could mean different things, but they always were connected to Hedda. The score, I really wanted, especially with the percussion, I really wanted us to feel like we were inside of her head. And all of the score was connected to her emotionality. The love theme also was sort of the one thing that that and I'd say the brass, the trumpet that we have, it's like, oh, that's the more emotional, maybe the more honest side of Hedda, where you're like, oh, she does feel things, but she will never say these things, and so we had to inform the audience in a different way. And the title cards as well, like that was handwriting, that we really wanted it to be handwritten because we wanted to, again, feel this sort of erratic, this not very beautiful penmanship, just like this feeling of passion and anger, but also frustration in the writing. So again, everything was about how can we get the audience information about her that she would never say herself.
There are two kinds of choreography in this film. There's the choreography we see on the dance floor, and there's the choreography inside the party about how one character moves in relation to another, where people are kind of geographically in relation to others, where they're looking down at them, where they're looking around a corner at them, if they're locked in a room with other characters. Can you talk about your mindset about choreographing the characters, both in the way they dance and the way they move around the property?
Yeah, for sure. So the first kind of choreography I worked with Shelley Maxwell, who's this amazing choreographer and movement director, and we really wanted to get everyone to move the way they would move. And we talked about the sort of stages of that, the stages of like feeling free in your body, because so much of the party is about people who are really uptight eventually getting to a place where they're meeting these like bohemians in the same place. So that progression of like, the beginning, it's also quiet where everyone, feels free, but they're still very it's very polite. And then by the end, the dancing and the movement is much more erratic and like loose. And then just people in the party, the choreography of that was really about the public versus private and how those two spheres touch. So, Hedda and the judge heading up to the mezzanine and seeing everyone, and only the corners of them and bits of them being glimpsed, or going into the nook, so they're fully private, but it's not really private because at any moment someone could come in, someone can come up the stairs. The other nook that they're in, that's downstairs. That movement and choreography was really about one, the personal happening in a public space, the private happening in public space, but also Hedda being able to see everyone and marionette everyone and puppeteer everyone. So we had to be super specific about how we controlled the flow.
Let me ask you this last question. One of the unfortunate consequences when you receive awards attention is that for about half a year, you're traveling, talking about your film, doing panels, going to receptions, lunches, having conversations like this. And especially for an independent filmmaker, it's at a point where you suddenly have a lot of juice and visibility, and yet you may not have time or energy to write or move projects forward. Yeah. Is that something that you feel too, that like people are talking about you and you're like, but I have this other thing and I want to do this other thing, but right now you're talking about Hedda?
Yes, I'm actually in that exact situation where I was like, oh, the end of the year, I'm going to write my next script. It's going to be great. And then Amazon said, no, you're not. And so it becomes vaguely existential, where you're like, the better this goes, the less time I'll have to do that. And this won't always happen. So I'm just embracing it for now. And this torture will end one day. No, but it's really lovely. And I love, actually, it's really been great to talk about Hedda. It's because a movie like this, especially, it's like getting people to see it. Part of doing this is also like people hear about it more, and so they'll go watch it now, and so that's really exciting. But it does become quite an existential thing where it's like, oh, this ends once people don't want to talk about it anymore. So it's like, you gotta balance it out. But I feel that hardcore.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.